The ocean had swallowed the world in 2029, and with it, every truth humanity once held sacred. Kael had grown up beneath the waves, in the sprawling underwater settlement of Arclight, a labyrinth of pressurized domes, bioluminescent corridors, and recycled air that tasted faintly of salt and metal. He was 24 years old, and he had never seen the sky. None of them had. The surface was forbidden. It was spoken of only in whispers, in cautionary tales told to children who dared to dream beyond the glass walls that separated them from the crushing weight of the deep. The elders said the surface was dead. Poisoned. A graveyard of cities and bones, scorched by nuclear fire and choked by radiation that would turn flesh to ash in minutes. They said the collapse had been absolute, that humanity's arrogance had summoned its own extinction, and only those who had fled below, who had built Arclight and the other submerged colonies, had survived. The ocean was their salvation. The surface was their grave. But Kael had always been cursed with curiosity. He worked in the lower maintenance sector, a job that required him to venture into the oldest, most neglected parts of Arclight, tunnels that had been sealed off decades ago, forgotten by everyone except the engineers who occasionally needed someone expendable to crawl through the dark. It was dangerous work. The metal groaned with the pressure of the ocean above, and more than once, Kael had seen a colleague dragged away by a sudden breach, their screams drowned in the roar of rushing water. But it paid enough to keep his sister, Lyra, fed and safe in the upper domes, and that was all that mattered. It was on a routine inspection, deep in Sector 7, that Kael found the map. The tunnel had been flooded for years, and his supervisor had sent him down with a breather mask and a worn-out flashlight to check the seals. The water was black and cold, filled with sediment and the skeletal remains of machinery that had rusted into oblivion. Kael moved slowly, his light cutting through the murk, when something caught his eye, a glint of metal embedded in the wall. He reached for it, brushing away decades of algae and corrosion, and pulled free a sealed cylindrical case. It was old. Pre-collapse old. The kind of artifact that could get him arrested just for possessing it. He should have reported it. But he didn't. That night, alone in his cramped quarters, Kael cracked open the case. Inside was a data chip, still intact despite the years. His hands trembled as he slotted it into his ancient terminal, half expecting it to be corrupted, unreadable. But the screen flickered to life, and what he saw made his breath catch in his throat. It was a map. Not of Arclight. Not of the ocean floor. It was a map of the surface. But that wasn't the impossible part. The map was dated 3 months ago. Kael's mind reeled. The surface was supposed to be dead. Uninhabitable. Yet here, in front of him, was a detailed cartographic rendering of a landmass, coordinates, structural markers, population estimates. And at the center of it all, a single notation: Zenith City, population, 47,000. 47,000 people. Living above the water. In a city that, according to every authority in Arclight, could not exist. Kael didn't sleep that night. He stared at the screen, tracing the lines of the map with his eyes, memorizing every detail. Zenith City was located approximately 200 kilometers north of Arclight's position, built on what the old maps called the Cascadia Plateau. It shouldn't have been habitable. The radiation levels alone should have rendered it a barren wasteland. Yet the map indicated otherwise. It showed infrastructure, energy grids, habitation zones. Someone had been lying. The question was, who? And why? Kael knew he couldn't share this with anyone. Trust was a luxury in Arclight, where the Council maintained order through surveillance, rationing, and the constant threat of exile to the deep. People who asked too many questions had a tendency to disappear. But he also knew he couldn't let this go. If Zenith City was real, if people were living on the surface, then everything the elders had told them was a lie. And lies that big didn't exist without a reason. He needed answers. And there was only one way to get them. He would have to go to the surface. The next week, Kael began to plan. He couldn't simply requisition a submersible, those were reserved for council officials and the military. But he had access to the maintenance bays, and he knew which vessels were rarely monitored. He spent his shifts siphoning supplies, oxygen tanks, ration packs, emergency flotation gear. He stole a radiation suit from the medical wing, an old model that had been decommissioned but still functioned. He told Lyra he was taking on extra shifts, that he'd be gone for a few days. She didn't question him. She never did. On the night he chose to leave, Arclight was quiet. The corridors were dimmed for the sleep cycle, and the hum of the generators was a low, constant drone. Kael moved through the shadows, his stolen gear packed into a waterproof duffel. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might give him away, but no one stopped him. No one saw. The maintenance bay was empty. The submersible he'd chosen was small, barely large enough for one person, but it was functional. He loaded his gear, sealed the hatch, and initiated the launch sequence. The bay doors groaned open, and the ocean swallowed him whole. The ascent was slow. Terrifying. The pressure gauges flickered, and more than once, Kael heard the hull creak in protest. But the submersible held. And as he rose, the darkness around him began to shift. The oppressive black of the deep gave way to murky blue, then to something lighter, something he had only seen in photographs. And then, he broke the surface. The sky was vast. Endless. A pale gray expanse that stretched in every direction, dotted with clouds that drifted lazily in the wind. Kael's breath fogged the glass of his viewport as he stared, unable to process what he was seeing. The surface wasn't dead. The air wasn't poison. The world above was alive. And then he saw it. On the horizon, rising from the water like a monument to impossibility, was a city. Towers of glass and steel, gleaming in the diffuse light. Platforms suspended on massive pylons, connected by bridges and transit lines. Ships, actual ships, not submersibles, moving between the structures. And people. Tiny figures moving along the walkways, living their lives as if the world had never ended. Zenith City. Kael's hands shook as he guided the submersible toward the nearest docking platform. He didn't know what he would find there. He didn't know if he'd be welcomed, or arrested, or worse. But he had come too far to turn back now. As the submersible locked into place and the hatch hissed open, Kael stepped out onto the platform. The air was cool, tinged with salt and something else, something metallic. The city loomed above him, impossibly real, impossibly alive. And then a voice spoke behind him, calm and cold. "You shouldn't have come here." Kael spun around. A figure stood in the shadows of the docking bay, dressed in a dark uniform he didn't recognize. Their face was obscured by a visor, but their posture radiated authority. "You've made a terrible mistake," the figure continued, stepping forward. "And now, there's no going back." Before Kael could respond, the world went dark. Kael woke to the sound of water dripping somewhere in the distance, a slow, rhythmic echo that pulled him from the void. His head throbbed, a dull ache that pulsed behind his eyes, and when he tried to move, he found his wrists bound to the arms of a metal chair. Panic surged through him, sharp and immediate, but he forced himself to breathe, to assess. The room was small, windowless, lit by a single flickering strip of fluorescent light overhead. The walls were concrete, stained with age and moisture. It smelled of rust and something antiseptic. He wasn't in Arclight. He was still in Zenith City. The door opened with a metallic screech, and the figure from the docking bay entered. They removed their visor, revealing a woman in her late 30s with sharp features and eyes the color of storm clouds. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe knot, and the insignia on her uniform, a stylized sun rising over water, meant nothing to Kael. She studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "You have questions," she said finally, her voice measured. "Everyone who comes here does." Kael's throat was dry, but he managed to speak. "Where am I?" "Zenith City. Detention block. You're lucky you're not in the ocean with a hole in your skull." She pulled a chair from the corner and sat down across from him, crossing her arms. "My name is Commander Vera. I oversee external security for the city. And you, Kael Torrin of Arclight, are an unauthorized visitor. Which makes you either a spy, a deserter, or an idiot." He blinked. "You know my name. We know everything about Arclight. We know about the other colonies too. New Haven. Obsidian Deep. The Council keeps you all locked in your little glass cages, feeding you lies about the surface, and you believe them because you have no reason not to. Vera leaned forward, her gaze piercing. But you didn't believe them, did you? That's why you're here. Kael swallowed hard. The map. I found a map. It said this place existed, but we were told the surface was dead. Poisoned. That anyone who came up here would die. And yet here you are. Breathing. Alive. Vera's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. The surface isn't dead, Kael. It never was. The radiation, the toxins, the nuclear hellscape, all of it was a lie. A story crafted by the Council to keep humanity divided. To keep you down there, and us up here. The words hit him like a physical blow. That's impossible. Why would they? Control. Vera stood, pacing the small room. After the collapse, the world didn't end. It fractured. Governments fell, nations dissolved, but people survived. Some went underground. Some went underwater. And some stayed on the surface, rebuilding in places the old world had forgotten. Zenith City is one of those places. We've been here for decades, thriving, while the underwater colonies were told they were the last remnants of humanity. The Council wanted it that way. Because fear keeps people compliant. And compliance keeps them in power. Kael's mind raced, trying to process what he was hearing. Everything he had been taught, everything he had believed, it was all a fabrication. The Elders, the Council, the very foundation of Arclight's existence, it was built on a lie. But why? What do they gain from keeping us isolated? Resources, Vera said simply. The ocean floor is rich with minerals, rare earth elements, energy sources that the surface needs. The Council mines them, trades them with us, and keeps their people ignorant of the exchange. They've created a captive labor force, and no one in Arclight even knows they are slaves. Kael felt sick. And Zenith? You're part of this. We were. Once. Vera's expression darkened. But not anymore. 15 years ago, we cut ties with the Council. We refused to be complicit in their deception. That's when they started telling people like you that the surface was uninhabitable. They couldn't risk anyone finding us, learning the truth. So they turned us into a myth. A forbidden story. Then why not tell everyone? Why not broadcast the truth to the colonies? Because the Council controls all communications in and out of Arclight. Any signal we send would be intercepted, scrambled, or traced back to us. And if they knew we were actively trying to subvert them, they'd retaliate. They have weapons, Kael. Submersibles armed with enough firepower to turn Zenith into rubble. We've stayed hidden because it's the only way to survive. Kael stared at her, his bound hands clenching into fists. So you just let them continue? Let people suffer in ignorance? We've been working on a solution, Vera said quietly. But it's taken time. And now you're here, complicating things. I didn't mean to. Intent doesn't matter. You came here in a stolen submersible, carrying Council equipment. If anyone in Arclight noticed you were gone, if they traced your route, you've just painted a target on our city. Vera's eyes narrowed. So tell me, Kael, did anyone see you leave? He hesitated. No. I was careful. And your sister? Lyra, isn't it? Does she know where you went? The mention of Lyra sent a chill down his spine. I didn't tell her anything. She thinks I'm working extra shifts. Vera studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Good. That means we have time. But not much. She moved to the door, then paused. You have a choice to make, Kael. You can stay here, in this room, until we decide what to do with you. Or you can help us. Help you how? You know Arclight. You know its systems, its people, its vulnerabilities. We've been planning an operation for months, a way to expose the Council's lies to the entire colony. But we need someone on the inside. Someone who can access their communication network, upload our broadcast, and get out before they realize what's happened. Vera turned to face him fully. You could be that person. Kael's breath caught. You're asking me to betray my home. I'm asking you to free your home, Vera corrected. The people of Arclight deserve the truth. They deserve to know there's a world up here, a life beyond the glass. But if you're not willing to help, I understand. You can go back to your cell, and we'll figure something else out. The silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Kael thought of Lyra, of the life they had in Arclight. It wasn't much, but it was familiar. Safe. And yet, the more he thought about it, the more he realized how hollow that safety was. Built on lies. Built on chains they couldn't even see. What would I have to do? He asked finally. Vera's expression softened, just slightly. First, you'd need to earn our trust. Prove you're not a council plant. Then, we train you. Teach you how to navigate Arclight's security protocols, how to avoid detection, how to upload the broadcast without triggering an alert. It won't be easy. And if you're caught, the council will execute you. Publicly. Kael closed his eyes, the weight of the decision pressing down on him like the ocean itself. But when he opened them again, his resolve had hardened. I'll do it. Whatever it takes. Vera nodded, a flicker of respect crossing her face. Good. Then we start now. She released his restraints, and Kael stood on unsteady legs. As she led him out of the detention block and into the labyrinthine corridors of Zenith City, he caught glimpses of the world above, markets bustling with activity, children laughing in open courtyards, sunlight streaming through transparent domes. It was everything Arclight wasn't. Everything it could be. But as they descended deeper into the city's underground levels, Vera brought him to a room filled with monitors, maps, and equipment. A dozen people worked at various stations, their faces tense with concentration. At the center of it all was a large screen displaying a live feed of Arclight, its domes, its sectors, its unsuspecting population. This is command, Vera said. From here, we coordinate everything. And this, she gestured to a schematic on one of the monitors, is your target. Kael stepped closer, studying the layout. It was the council chamber, deep in the heart of Arclight's administrative sector. Heavily guarded. Nearly impossible to breach. You want me to get in there? Not just in. We need you to access their primary server, the one that controls all communications. Upload our broadcast, and transmit it to every screen, every terminal, every device in Arclight simultaneously. The council won't be able to stop it, and once the truth is out, there's no putting it back. Kael's stomach twisted. And if I fail? Vera met his gaze, her expression grim. Then we all die. You, me, everyone in this city. Because the council won't stop until we're erased from existence. Before Kael could respond, an alarm blared through the room, a sharp, piercing wail that sent everyone into motion. Vera's face went pale as she turned to one of the operators. What is it? The operator's fingers flew across the keyboard, then froze. Commander, we have incoming. 3 submersibles, armed. Council signatures. Vera cursed under her breath. They found us. Kael's blood ran cold. That's impossible. No one knew I was coming here. Then they tracked you, Vera snapped, turning to him with fury in her eyes. Or someone tipped them off. Either way, we're out of time. The lights in the room flickered, and a deep, resonant boom echoed through the city, the sound of an explosion, distant but undeniable. Zenith City was under attack. And Kael realized, with sinking horror, that he might have just doomed them all. The explosion shook the foundation of Zenith City like the hand of an angry god. Dust rained from the ceiling of command, and the monitors flickered with static before stabilizing. Vera was already moving, barking orders into her comm unit as the room erupted into controlled chaos. Operators abandoned their stations, grabbing weapons from lockers along the walls. Alarms continued to wail, a relentless cry that drilled into Kael's skull. Seal sectors 4 through 7, Vera commanded, her voice cutting through the noise. Evacuate the lower platforms to the central structure. Get everyone who can't fight into the shelters. And someone tell me where those submersibles are now. An operator, a young man with sweat beading on his forehead, responded without looking up from his console. 2 are circling the eastern supports, firing on the stabilizers. The 3rd is heading directly for the primary dock, where he came in. The operator gestured sharply at Kael. Every eye in the room turned to him. The weight of their stares was crushing, accusatory. Vera's expression had gone from fury to something colder, more calculating. She crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and grabbed Kael by the collar, slamming him against the nearest wall. How did they know? She hissed, her face inches from his. Did you signal them? Is there a tracker on your submersible? No. Kael's mind raced, scrambling for answers he didn't have. I swear, I checked everything. I was careful. Not careful enough. Vera released him, turning back to the monitors. The live feeds showed chaos, people running through the city's transparent walkways, smoke billowing from one of the support pylons, and in the water below, the dark shapes of Council submersibles moving with predatory precision. They are using shaped charges. Targeting our infrastructure, not our people. They want to cripple us, not destroy us. Why? Kael asked, his voice hoarse. Because a destroyed city can't answer questions, Vera replied grimly. But a conquered one can. They want to know how we've stayed hidden, what we know, who we've been in contact with. And they'll tear this place apart to find out. She turned to one of her officers, a broad-shouldered man with a scar running down his jaw. Malik, prepare the defense grid. Buy us as much time as you can. Malik nodded and left at a run. Another explosion, closer this time, sent a shudder through the structure. The lights flickered again, and one of the monitors went dark. Kael forced himself to think past the panic. My submersible. If there's a tracker, I can find it. Disable it. Maybe lead them away from here. You'd be dead before you reach the dock, Vera said flatly. And even if you weren't, it's too late. They're already here. She paused, her jaw tightening. But there might be another way. She moved to the central console and pulled up a schematic, not of Zenith City, but of Arclight. The underwater colony's familiar domes and tunnels glowed in pale blue lines against the black screen. Vera traced a path through the structure with her finger, stopping at the council chamber. If the council sent a strike team, it means their attention is focused here. Their defenses in Arclight will be spread thin. This might be the only chance we get to execute the plan. Kael stared at her, incredulous. You want to do this now? While your city is under attack? Especially now, Vera said, her voice hard. Because if we don't, there won't be another opportunity. The Council will take Zenith, extract everything they can, and then tighten their grip on every colony they control. The truth will die here, with us. She met his eyes, and for the first time, he saw something other than suspicion in her gaze. Desperation. You wanted to help. This is how. Kael's hands trembled. Everything in him screamed to refuse, to find another way, but the logic was inescapable. If Zenith fell, Arclight would remain in darkness. The lies would continue. Lyra would live her entire life never knowing there was something more. How do I get back? He asked. Vera pulled up another screen, showing a route through Zenith's lower levels to a secondary dock on the far side of the city. We have a fast attack submersible, smaller, faster than what you came in. It's equipped with stealth plating and a scrambler to avoid detection. It'll get you back to Arclight's outer perimeter. From there, you're on your own. And the broadcast. She handed him a small data chip, no bigger than his thumbnail. Everything we need is on here. Upload it to the Council's primary server, initiate the transmission, and it'll cascade through every system in Arclight. They won't be able to stop it. She hesitated, then added, but Kael, once you do this, there's no going back. The Council will know it was an inside job. They'll hunt for whoever did it. Your life in Arclight is over. Kael took the chip, feeling its weight in his palm. It was so small. Such a tiny thing to hold the fate of thousands. What about Lyra? My sister, she'll be a target. We'll extract her, Vera said. Once the broadcast goes live, we'll send a team to get her out. I promise you, she'll be safe. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was all he had. Okay, Kael said quietly. I'll do it. Vera nodded, then turned to one of the remaining operators. Get him to the secondary dock. Full escort. And send word to the extraction team. Prepare for insertion into Arclight. Primary target is Lyra Torrin, Sector 12, Residential Block 7. The operator acknowledged and gestured for Kael to follow. As they moved toward the exit, another explosion rocked the city, this one so close that the floor buckled beneath their feet. Kael stumbled, catching himself against the wall. Through the open doorway, he could see one of the transparent walkways outside, and beyond it, the ocean, now churning with debris and smoke. A council submersible rose into view, its hull bristling with weapons, and fired a volley into one of the support pylons. The metal shrieked, twisted, and began to collapse. Move! Vera's voice snapped him back to reality. He ran. The corridors of Zenith City were a maze of panic and preparation. People rushed past carrying supplies, children clutched in their arms, weapons slung over their shoulders. Soldiers in the same dark uniforms as Vera took up positions at choke points, setting up barricades and loading ammunition. No one questioned Kael as he and his escort sprinted through the chaos. They were all too focused on survival. The secondary dock was smaller than the primary, tucked into a reinforced alcove at the city's base. The submersible Vera had promised was already prepped, its sleek black hull humming with barely contained energy. A technician handed Kael a flight suit and a rebreather, speaking in rapid, clipped sentences. Autopilot will take you to Arclight's perimeter. After that, manual control. Stealth systems are active, but they are not perfect. Stay low, stay quiet, and for God's sake, don't fire on anyone unless you have no choice. Understood. Kael nodded, pulling on the suit. It fit poorly, too tight in the shoulders, but it would have to do. He climbed into the submersible, and the hatch sealed above him with a hiss. The interior was cramped, all sharp angles and glowing readouts. He strapped himself into the pilot's seat and initiated the launch sequence. The dock's outer doors opened, and the ocean swallowed him once more. The journey back was nothing like his ascent. The submersible moved like a shadow, its engines whisper quiet, its hull absorbing the sonar pings of the Council vessels. Kael watched the monitors as Zenith City receded behind him, the battle still raging. He saw flashes of light in the water, explosions, weapons fire, the death throes of a city that had dared to defy the Council. And he wondered if he would ever see it again. Arclight appeared on the horizon like a ghost, its domes glowing faintly in the deep. Kael switched to manual control, guiding the submersible toward the outer maintenance tunnels, the same ones he had used to escape. The stealth systems held. No alarms. No pursuit. He docked in silence, secured the vessel, and climbed out into the familiar darkness of Sector 7. It felt like coming home. It felt like betrayal. Kael moved quickly, keeping to the shadows, the data chip clutched in his hand. The route to the Council chamber was burned into his memory from Vera's briefing. He knew the blind spots in the surveillance system, the gaps in the patrol schedules, the access codes that would get him through the security doors. It should have been impossible. But desperation made the impossible feel inevitable. He reached the outer perimeter of the administrative sector and paused, pressing himself against the cold metal wall. 2 guards stood at the entrance to the Council chamber, their postures relaxed. They weren't expecting a threat. Why would they? The enemy was far away, attacking a city that wasn't supposed to exist. Kael took a breath, steadied himself, and stepped into the corridor. "Hey," he called out, forcing his voice to sound casual. "Maintenance. Got a report of a pressure leak in the server room." The guards exchanged a glance. One of them, a woman with sharp eyes, frowned. No one called in a leak. "Yeah, well, someone should've. You want to be the one who explains to the Council why their systems went down because of a blown seal." Kael shrugged, holding up a fake work tablet he'd grabbed from a locker. "I'm just doing my job." The guards hesitated, then the woman nodded. "Fine. But make it quick." Kael walked past them, his heart hammering so hard he thought they might hear it. The corridor beyond was empty. He reached the server room, swiped the stolen access card Vera had given him, and the door slid open. Inside, the hum of machinery was deafening. Rows of servers stretched into the darkness, their lights blinking in rhythmic patterns. Kael found the primary terminal and inserted the data chip. The screen flickered to life, lines of code cascading across it. He initiated the upload. 10%. 20%. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. 50%. The door opened. One of the guards stood there, her weapon raised. "Step away from the terminal," she ordered. Kael didn't move. 70%. "I said step away." 90%. The guard fired. The shot went wide, slamming into the server bank beside Kael's head in a spray of sparks and molten metal. The impact threw him sideways, his shoulder crashing into the console as alarms erupted throughout the chamber. Red emergency lights bathed everything in crimson, and the mechanical voice of the security system began its monotonous countdown. Unauthorized access detected. Lockdown initiated in 30 seconds. Kael's vision swam, his ears ringing from the blast, but the screen in front of him read 100%. The upload was complete. Transmission protocol activated, the terminal announced in a calm, synthesized voice that seemed absurdly out of place. Broadcasting to all colony networks in 3, 2, 1. The guard fired again, but this time Kael was already moving. He threw himself behind a server rack as the bullet tore through the space he'd occupied a moment before. His mind raced. The broadcast was live, there was no stopping it now, but he was trapped. The lockdown doors were already descending, massive slabs of reinforced steel meant to contain breaches and seal off compromised sections. If he didn't get out in the next 20 seconds, he'd be entombed here. "Stop him!" the guard shouted into her comm, her voice tight with panic. "He's uploaded something into the system, get a tech team down here now." Kael didn't wait to hear more. He bolted for the exit, keeping low, weaving between the server towers. Another shot rang out, striking the floor where his feet had been. The door was 10 meters away. 8. 6. The lockdown barrier was halfway down, a descending guillotine of metal that would crush anyone caught beneath it. He dove. His body slid across the smooth floor, the fabric of his maintenance suit tearing as he passed under the barrier with inches to spare. The steel slammed down behind him with a sound like thunder, sealing the server room. The guard was still inside, shouting, but her voice was muffled now, distant. Kael scrambled to his feet and ran. The corridor ahead was chaos. Screens embedded in the walls, normally displaying colony announcements and work schedules, were now filled with a single image, Vera's face. Her voice echoed through every speaker, calm and clear and utterly damning. "Citizens of Arclight, my name is Commander Vera of Zenith City, and I am speaking to you from the surface, the world you were told no longer exists." Kael ran past clusters of workers who had stopped mid-task, staring at the screens in shock. Some looked confused. Others horrified. A few were already crying. "For decades, your council has lied to you. The surface is not poisoned. It is not dead. There are cities here, thriving communities of people who never went below. The radiation, the toxins, the stories of an uninhabitable wasteland, all of it was fabricated to keep you compliant, to keep you working, to keep you from discovering that you are not the last remnants of humanity. You are prisoners." Alarms continued to blare. Security forces were mobilizing, their boots pounding through the corridors like the drumbeat of war. Kael ducked into a maintenance shaft, crawling through the narrow passage as voices shouted behind him. His lungs burned. His hands were slick with sweat and blood from where he'd scraped them on the floor. Vera's broadcast continued, relentless and unforgiving. "Your council trades with the surface. They mine resources from the ocean floor and sell them to us in exchange for technology and supplies. But they never told you. They kept you in the dark because knowledge is power, and they wanted all of it for themselves. Kael emerged from the shaft into a residential corridor. People stood in their doorways, staring at the screens, their faces pale with disbelief. An older man turned to Kael, his eyes wide and lost. "Is it true? Is she telling the truth?" Kael didn't answer. He couldn't. He just kept running. "We tried to expose this years ago," Vera's voice continued, "but every attempt was blocked. Every signal jammed. So we waited. And now, thanks to one of your own, a man brave enough to risk everything for the truth, you finally know. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge?" The broadcast ended. For a moment, the screens went black. Then they flickered back to life, showing the council chamber, a room Kael had just escaped from. 5 figures sat at a raised dais, their faces obscured by shadows. The council. The architects of the lie. One of them leaned forward, and when they spoke, their voice was cold enough to freeze blood. "This broadcast is a fabrication. A psychological attack by surface terrorists who seek to destabilize our society. Do not believe their lies. Return to your homes. Order will be restored." But the damage was done. Kael could see it in the faces of the people around him. Doubt had taken root, and doubt was a seed that grew fast in the dark. He reached Sector 12, where Lyra lived, his legs screaming in protest. The residential block was in turmoil. Families argued in the hallways. Children cried. Security forces moved through the crowd, trying to restore calm, but their authority had been shaken. People shouted questions at them, demanded answers, and the guards had none to give. Kael forced his way through the crowd, shoving past bodies until he reached Lyra's door. He pounded on it with his fist. "Lyra! Lyra, it's me. Open up." The door slid open, and his sister stood there, her face pale and streaked with tears. "Kael? What's happening? They are saying the surface is real, that the council lied, but that's insane, it has to be." He grabbed her by the shoulders. "It's true. All of it. I've been there. I've seen it." He pulled her into the corridor, glancing over his shoulder. "We don't have much time. Vera promised to extract you, to get you out of here before the council." "Extract me?" Lyra pulled back, her expression shifting from fear to anger. "Kael, what did you do?" "I did what I had to." He tried to take her hand, but she yanked it away. "You're the one who uploaded that broadcast, aren't you? You're the reason they are saying someone from inside." Her voice broke. "Kael, they'll kill you. They'll kill both of us." "Not if we get out. Zenith City can protect us. There's a life up there, Lyra. A real life. You don't have to spend the rest of your days breathing recycled air and eating ration paste. There's sky. There's space. There's freedom. There's nothing." Lyra shouted, and the rawness in her voice stopped him cold. "Kael, this is our home. These are our people. You just tore apart everything they believed in, and for what? So you could feel like a hero." The words hit harder than any bullet. Kael stared at his sister, seeing the betrayal in her eyes, and something inside him cracked. "I did this for you. For all of us." "You did this for yourself," Lyra whispered. "And now we're all going to pay for it." Before Kael could respond, the corridor exploded with movement. Security forces poured in from both ends, weapons raised, voices barking commands. "On the ground. Hands behind your head. Now!" Kael's instincts screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere to go. He sank to his knees, hands raised, as the guards surrounded him. Lyra stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. One of the guards grabbed Kael by the back of his neck and forced him flat against the floor, wrenching his arms behind him. The metal of the restraints bit into his wrists. "Kael Torin," a voice said, smooth and venomous. "You've caused quite a bit of trouble." Kael turned his head and saw a figure stepping through the crowd of guards. They wore the formal robes of the council, deep blue trimmed with silver, and their face was hidden behind a reflective mask, a tradition meant to symbolize impartiality, but which now felt like a symbol of tyranny. "You will be taken to the council chamber," the figure continued. "You will answer for your crimes. And you will tell us everything you know about Zenith City and its conspirators. Go to hell, Kael spat. The masked figure tilted their head, almost amused. We'll see. They dragged him away. Lyra's voice followed him, screaming his name, but it grew fainter with every step. The last thing he saw before they pulled a hood over his head was her face, twisted with anguish, fury, and something that looked horribly like hatred. The world went dark. Kael didn't know how long they kept him in the cell. Hours. Days. Time lost meaning in the absolute blackness, broken only by the periodic hiss of the ventilation system and the distant echo of footsteps. They didn't torture him, not physically. But the isolation was its own kind of agony, the silence a weight that pressed down on his mind until he began to doubt his own memories. Had Zenith City been real? Had Vera existed? Or had it all been some fever dream, a delusion born from desperation? When they finally came for him, he was almost grateful. The hood was ripped off, and light flooded his vision, blinding and merciless. Kael blinked, his eyes streaming, and slowly the world came into focus. He was in the council chamber, standing at the center of a circular platform surrounded by towering seats. The 5 council members sat in judgment above him, their masks gleaming in the cold light. Kael Torin, the central figure, intoned. You stand accused of treason, sabotage, and conspiracy against the colony of Arclight. How do you plead? Kael's throat was raw, his voice a rasp. I plead that you're all liars. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The central councillor leaned forward. You uploaded a terrorist broadcast into our systems. You compromised our security. You endangered every life in this colony. And you did it at the behest of surface dwellers, people who have no understanding of what it takes to survive down here. They understand better than you, Kael shot back. They know what it's like to live without chains. Chains. The councillor's laugh was cold. You think we imprisoned you? We saved you. When the world burned, when the surface became a graveyard, we built this place. We gave humanity a future. And this is how you repay us. You built a cage, Kael said. And you told us it was paradise. The councillor was silent for a long moment. Then they stood, and the other 4 followed suit. Your sentence is death. You will be taken to the airlock and expelled into the deep. Your name will be erased from our records. You will be forgotten. Kael's heart stuttered, but he forced himself to stand tall. People won't forget. The truth is out. You can't put it back. Can't we? The councillor gestured, and a screen behind them flickered to life. It showed Zenith City, or what was left of it. The towers were dark. The platforms were shattered. Smoke rose from the wreckage, and the ocean around it was littered with debris. Your precious surface city is gone. Destroyed. And every person who helped you is dead. The words were a hammer blow. Kael's knees buckled, but the guards held him upright. No, that's a reminder, the councillor said, that defiance has consequences. They dragged him toward the airlock. Kael thrashed, screaming, but his voice was lost in the cavernous chamber. The airlock door opened, revealing the black water beyond, and he was shoved inside. The door sealed behind him with a hiss. Wait! Kael pounded on the glass, his breath fogging the surface. Wait, please. The outer door began to open. The pressure differential would tear him apart in seconds. And then the lights went out. The chamber plunged into darkness. Alarms blared. Kael heard shouts, the crackle of weapons fire, and then, silence. The airlock door stopped. The outer seal remained closed. A voice crackled over the intercom, familiar and steady. Kael Torin. This is Commander Vera. Hold on. We're coming for you. The lights flickered back on, and through the chaos, Kael saw them, soldiers in dark uniforms, storming the council chamber. Zenith City's forces. Alive. Fighting. The broadcast hadn't just freed Arclight. It had started a war. And Kael realized, as the airlock door was pried open and hands pulled him to safety, that the truth had only just begun to spread. The end was not an ending. It was an awakening.